getting people excited and wanting to perform. It's not about do people do the minimum. What's going to differentiate the globally successful organization is people beyond reach, people that they can't see, are going to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go in and make things better. Our job is to create a structure, an organization, a culture, and an environment in which people do that and want to come back the next day and do it with us. And that means we've got to focus on how we train and develop. And we're going to see major changes in terms of interactivity now. Again, this afternoon we'll talk on some of the technology that's supporting that. And managing diversity. It's not just about making sure we've got X% of which race and religion and whatever in the organization. Managing diversity is enabling those people to share the value that their cultural differences bring, and being strong enough to understand when to pull people together with those different values. And then HR software. There is going to be disruption. If you look at what the rate of change, even in Israel, which in terms of HR technology is relatively smaller than obviously the US, we're seeing company after company being taken over, new companies starting up. We're seeing mergers and acquisitions and so on. This is a rapidly changing situation. It's a major headache for HR. Do you go the route of going with the one supplier who can supply everything, which means you get 80% of what you want perfectly, 20% comme ci, comme ça? Do you go at the other extreme with the organization that's going to provide you best of breed, and then you've got the issue of how do you integrate those? Every vendor you speak to is going to offer you a different solution. The one vendor that tells you they have the perfect answer doesn't understand the question. There is, as yet, no perfect solution. What we've got to do in HR is we've got to learn what we need. We've got to learn what is possible. And we've then got to choose what is best for our organization right now and acknowledge that that's probably going to change. Hey, welcome to the real world. The concept of buying something that is going to be in and of itself the perfect solution doesn't exist anymore. And again, this afternoon, Atan and I will try and help you to understand that. And then there's the concept of big data. One of the biggest problems for many organizations, and I understand it may have been touched on by the former speaker, but my Hebrew wasn't up to it, is this whole issue of accuracy of information and so on. I worked with one organization that had gone through a global acquisition process. Many companies have been pulled together, and they asked us to provide some technology to help them manage talent. And they said, we can't understand it. We've been running this report that analyzes the number of males and the number of females at a certain grade, and despite all of our efforts, the answers still seem to be coming out basically the same. And I thought, that's odd. So we had a look. And the answer was they were running a report that looked for the number of males, M, and the number of females, F, in their database. And those weren't changing. I looked deeper. And the reason they weren't changing was that a very small percentage of the employees had M or F against them. Why? Because in the companies they acquired, one had used 1 and 2, one had used male and female, typed out in full. One had even got people who were male, M-A-I-L. For those of you who are fluent in English, you'll know that that's actually how you send letters to other people. They had 15 different values in the company for male and female. They were simply analyzing. And you say, that's preposterous. No, that is typical. Go back, look at the quality of the data in your company. I guarantee you, most of you, the quality of your data is very poor to sustain a global strategic analysis of how you're going to run the company. So those are some of the trends. And of course, what that means is we need to consider our skills. So what's the changing role and status of HR? In the organizations that I see who are focusing on being global, who are humble enough to realize that perhaps they don't know the answers. In other words, they don't have the arrogant people who say, we're the best and we're going to do, everybody in the world's going to do what we tell them. The organizations that understand that this is about winning the hearts and minds of a global workforce, how are HR viewed? Number one, they're viewed as the people who find the keys to the global business challenges. They're the people who go out and ask the questions. They look for what's going to work over there, rather than sitting in Denver and say, what are we going to do to make it work? It's a fundamental mindset. They are proactive and they are respected and they are trusted advisors. I had a senior HR person come up to me at one of these presentations a while back, and he said, the big problem is I don't get invited to the meetings. And I said, that's not the problem. The problem is you don't go to them. And he said, what do you mean? I said, go to the meeting and wait for them to throw you out. Your job is HR. Your job is to be there. If they don't ask you, it says something about the value they believe you'll bring if you do. Go, prove your worth, and see if they throw you out. And he said, what if they throw you out? I said, two things. One is you've learned something, and secondly, you might want to try again. We've got to understand that you don't gain trust by saying, I'm here from HR, I'm here to help you. We gain trust by going into the thick of the battle and helping the people at the front line. And there's something about enabling the cross-cultural understanding. Why should a manager who's run a fabulous factory in Denver understand what it's like to run a factory 25 miles outside of Beijing? Why do we make the assumption that he or she should know? That's part of our job, to understand the differences, to pick the people with the capability to go and succeed, and to give them the guidance and the instruction so that when they do, they can actually succeed. So I think there are three critical things. So what professionally do we need to do? So I'm getting to the sort of the 10 things that you need to do. First of all, I think we need to stop. Have you noticed it's a bit like legislation? We elect politicians to pass laws. I mean, how many laws have we got? When I went to the US, I was staggered by the tax code. I spend 3 weeks a month in the US and 1 week a month in Europe. And I was staggered by their tax code. If you print it out, it's like this. I mean, no wonder people fiddle the tax. I mean, there's nobody who knows what's right anyway. And the same is true in organizations. We're always thinking about what we have to do. The extra, the more. One of the things we've got to do is to step back and say, are there some things that we've got to stop doing? Yeah, despite, in the US, 3,000 books a day are published, and everybody thinks the next one, if I buy the next book and read it, I'm going to have the magic answer. There isn't a magic bullet. Let's stop looking for it. Let's focus and say, our job is to do real practical things. Yeah? Let's stop focusing internally. Yeah? I was really depressed. One of the websites where HR professionals exchange the other day, there was this huge debate going on about what do we call ourselves. Do you know what? I don't give a damn. Yeah? What I want to know is, what are you doing for me that's useful? And if you look at the number of words we've added to the English language, you know, in HR, you know, empowerment and all those other things, yeah, we've got to get our minds straight. We've got to start focusing and start being clear. We've got to stop trivializing. Yeah? Some processes are going to be difficult. We can't win them all. I worked with a big engineering company that said, we used to have leaders here, now all we've got is managers who can't make a decision unless they have focus group on the door. Yeah? We've got to start thinking about really focusing, doing practical things. We've got to stop piloting processes and then implementing something different. One of my pet peeves is 360. How many organizations here use 360-degree feedback? Yeah, okay. Number of organizations who design a 360-degree feedback, and they do it with the senior management team, yeah? And they involve them, and they look at the questionnaire, and they get one-to-one coaching, yeah? And they get follow-up, and they get support, and they're given access to development. And they go, this works. Let's do it for everybody. And what they roll out to everybody is an online website. You get the report through the mail. There's someone you can ring if you need help. And they say, we can't understand why it's not working. Duh. You didn't implement what you designed. This is a classic that we have in HR. And they say, well, we couldn't afford it. Well, if you couldn't afford it, it obviously wasn't adding value, so you shouldn't have done it anyway then. So if it's worth doing, pay for it. And stop accepting poor quality data. Oh, we have harsh and lenient managers. One of the reasons, remember I said I joined Mefilät in 1988? I joined Mefilät in 1998, and I'm a scientist by training, pure physics and applied electronic engineering. My wife describes me as a techie turned shrink. And I joined Mefilät because in 1976, they were already analyzing performance appraisal data to statistically detect and quantify the level of harshness and leniency in appraisers. It's 2011. I don't have one client in the US who is actually doing that. That is technically possible. It's hugely beneficial. Yeah? We've got to start understanding that you can get quality data. Your ability to get quality measurements of people is directly proportional to your willingness and your desire to do it. So we've got to start doing these things. So some of the things we need to stop. So let's think more about what we're going to do. I'm not going to talk to you about organizational structures to go global. There's enough work out there. I'm a great admirer of Dave Ulrich and the work he's done on how you need to move and evolve your organization. But the one thing we have to do is we've got to start understanding in HR that strategy isn't merely thinking. Strategic is not merely white papers. If we're really going to be strategic, it means looking ahead, understanding strategy, but then doing something about it. We are not strategic HR until something changes. And what are we going to do to help that change? And again, a number of years, two times in particular, in Mefilät, we've analyzed where we've lost business. And would you believe over 2/3 of projects that we didn't win because other vendors got them. We didn't win because HR didn't manage to see the project through to delivery, to get the budget, to get the commitment, to make it survive other pressures in the organization. So there's a lot of things about how people operate, and you've got speakers on the platform today who are going to talk to you about things that you need in yourself as a global HR to be able to achieve influence across national boundaries. And I'm just going to share with you a number of things that are going to help us in HR make this transition. Whoops, you're in the hands of a skilled operator here. We are seeing a major change in the face of HR. It's already been touched on this morning. At the minute, we're all focusing on workforce planning and we're focusing on rewards and so on. But further down the pike, there are even bigger challenges coming. So what are the skills we need to achieve that? And this is where, again, in many organizations, they've identified that HR has huge opportunities to improve. In OD, our ability to manage change in organizations, our ability to do workforce analysis. So again, this afternoon, there's a track looking at the issue of data. Globally, you have to understand how to engage people. How you engage people in Germany, in Japan, in Israel, and in America is fundamentally different, the methods that you need to use. We need to understand that. Performance management. In most organizations, we are not managing performance. We are at best guiding it, letting it happen, and then rapidly trying to record an assessment of it. We have to now manage it. We have to have influence 24/7. And reward management. We are entering a period globally where there will not be the budgets to have the double-digit increases, the double-digit bonuses. And our whole mindset needs to change, therefore, in terms of how we manage them. And, of course, organizational design. We are going to see companies where the design is organic, where every time someone leaves, we don't replace the person, we re-engineer the entire body. We are going to see organic organizations become a feature of society. Now, that won't, of course, work in things like banks and call centers and so on, but it will exist in many, many other types of organizations. And where do we fall short then? So again, when I go out and I talk to CEOs and CEOs and I say, what are the skills HR need? Of course they say business acumen. We need to understand the P&L and the balance sheet and the operation. We need to be able to talk to the factory managers about what happens in a factory. So yes, we do need that. But equally they're saying we need to understand data skills. I had one of the most exciting interchanges on the internet with an HR person who was trying to explain how a correlation is a cause and effect. In the UK, for 5 years in the 70s, the number of street lights in the country correlated statistically with the number of drunk driving accidents. I put it to you that that is not a cause and effect relationship. We did not take down the lampposts and reduce the number of drunks. And again, it's a silly example, but in HR, we need to understand what causes what. And again, this afternoon, Etan is going to give some examples of how simple analysis of data can show that. We need to understand psychology. We used to attract a lot of psychologists into HR, and at the time, we used to go, oh, yeah. Now we need them. Now is a time when we need to understand what makes people tick. How are we going to get someone 5,000 miles away to wake up and be glad to come in and do what we want them to do? That's not about policy, it's not about procedures, and it's certainly not about how many yen we pay them. It's about understanding how we create an environment in culture, how we inspire people to do things. And we need to understand cross-cultural awareness and knowledge. And one of the things that we're doing, Mefilät provides in North America and the UK, very significant customized solutions, technology for talent management, for performance management. And the one thing we know is putting in the software doesn't fix the issue. You need to understand when you're designing that, how is someone in India, when they're asked to log into this screen and put information in, how are they going to think? How are they going to feel? Are they going to believe that this is a positive process? Culturally, are they inclined to believe it will be anonymous and confidential? All the things that we would say, of course. People in other countries don't say, of course. Yeah? So we need to understand how the things that we design will be misunderstood or understood by people in other cultures. And of course, that means we need to understand how to make change happen and also how to put the graphic behind the letters so that you can read the whole word. That's a skill I've yet to develop. So that's the skills. So what do we need to do then? 10 things. Number one, if I was to do one thing in HR, we've got to recruit the best people in HR and we've got to stop accepting anything less. We should not accept the mediocre. Hold out, wait. Work your butt off, work extra hours until you can find the best person to join your organization in HR, because everyone who's mediocre is going to pull down your ability to influence. Number two, really learn the business. And some organizations are fabulous at this. You actually have to go out, if they lease cars, you have to go out and wash cars. And some people say, oh, yeah, that's a crazy American idea. No. It helps people understand the business. You have to understand what it's like at the coalface. And I said there, be the business. We are a function that no longer can afford to support the business. That puts a delay in what we do that is unacceptable. To be agile, and we've spent 2 years now analyzing what makes an organization agile. What makes an organization able to respond quickly to the challenges that face it? And one of the things is everybody believes they are the business. If you believe you serve the business, you are always hesitating. You're waiting for someone else to tell you what the goal, what the vision, what the mission is. In HR, we've got to be out there. This is now a people issue. Globalization is not all about funding. It is about the people. We have to be out there. We have to be the business. We have to be determining things. Number 3, we have to develop the highest possible level of analytical skills. I cannot underestimate that. And if you're someone who believes that statistics is not your strength, then find someone to work with you who is. And don't believe this is immensely complex. There are many organizations who do not know who their top talent is. Highest performers, highest potential. It's not rocket science, a 9-box as some of us are used to. I've got a company in Canada, by the way, they're engineers. They have a 100 by 100 box. Only engineers could do that. They've got 100 measures of performance and they have 100 measures of potential, and one day they'll finish working out which box people are in. But on a serious note, we need to develop a level of skill to work with the data that we've got. Number 4, we need to focus on root causes, not symptoms. We've got to understand what makes things happen. And frequently we gloss over them. And employee engagement is a good example. The number of companies I see doing employee engagement surveys, which is something we do, and yet they take the results at a very superficial level. The problem about engagement is individual. It's located to an individual manager. We need to understand, how do we get to what's actually causing things? We also need to make sure that what we fix is what needs fixing, not just what people want fixed. You ask me what I want things quick, easy, and preferably to go away. I know I don't need that. Yeah? What I need is, I need exercise, I need to eat salad. What I want is McDonald's and cookies, yeah? So don't ask people just what they want. Now, you need to know what people want, but our job is to get under the hood and find out. We need to validate some of our thinking. I worked with one organization that put in a competency model, brought in a consultancy to do the training, and they asked us to do a 360 to help. We did the 360, and the analyst who worked on it actually rang me 11 o'clock at night and said, "This is really exciting, Clint." And I said, "What?" She said, "I've done a correlation analysis," she said, "and the people who went through the training, the 360 proves that they're demonstrating the behaviors." Now, those of you in training might not be surprised, but I was, wow, training that actually changed behavior, this is cool. So she said, "No," she said, "that's not the exciting piece." And I said, what's the exciting piece then? She said, "I've also correlated it with the attrition figures and the employee engagement figures." She said, "And the managers who've started to demonstrate these behaviors actually are losing people. And the engagement scores are going down." So, long story short, we rang the client, we told them, and the client said, "You stupid consultants, you must have got it wrong," which is, usually what happens if you tell them news they don't like. We went back and we got more data and we repeated the analysis, and the statistical correlations came out stronger. What we were able to prove was, in that business, the competencies that they were attempting to drive led to a demonstrable, I stress, a provable change in the way in which people behaved, but it damaged the business. We have to, in HR, understand when we pull a lever over here, what happens over there might not be what we expect. It's our job to understand that. Number 5, make processes effective, integrate them into the business, and stop oversimplifying. Yeah, gone are the days where performance management, talent management, development, compensation, or we don't go to lunch with them. We now have to think in terms of the employee experience. The employee's experience is an integrated experience. And some things are not simple. Yeah? And it's quite fascinating, with the exception of a couple of companies that got a lot of publicity in Texas and New York. There's not many companies where a CFO would stand in front of the board and say, "We looked at our procedures for authorizing budgets and expenses, and we asked people what they wanted, and what they said is they'd like something really simple. And I'm pleased to report to you 2 things. Number one, 67% of our managers are following the authorization procedures, and we hope that goes up, and we put a bucket of cash by the door. I mean, no CFO would do that. But the number of times I've attended board meetings where the representative from HR has said, optimizing performance is a critical issue in this company, and we've designed a performance management process, and I'm pleased to tell you that everybody likes it, and 2/3 of the managers have completed it. Why is that acceptable? Our people are our most valuable asset. Isn't that what we're taught to recite? Isn't that the first qualification? And then when you go for an interview, what do you believe? I believe that our people are our most important asset. You get the job. Yeah. And yet, we put in place processes and we allow them to be trivial. We allow people to choose, and we call it empowerment. We have to stand up for processes. We have to make them work, and we have to make them work globally across boundaries. So we need to learn, therefore, when to act and when to consult. There are times for both. Change can be achieved through two routes. Yes, you have to involve people and excite them and ask them questions and engage them. But there are times when you have to shout, fire! Get out! The place is burning. There are times when in HR we have to make changes happen. We have to go to the CEO and say, this is critical. We've got to make this happen. We don't have time to sit around discussing it. We need to know when that is a requirement. 7, we therefore need to believe in what we do. And you've got someone in Tel Aviv, Marone Klein, who runs an organization called the Courage Institute. He's got an operation in Philadelphia. And he specializes in training people, not how to have courage. I mean, again, you're a nation with a strong military background, and I admire the courage and the conviction and the willingness to be direct that I experience here. But it's all relative. Yeah? In the greater scheme of things, you're in a culture that is like that. You've got to be even more courageous to win your arguments in HR. So you've got to learn how to act in a way that demonstrates courage, to build commitment so that people will say, do you know what? I don't think people are necessarily going to like this, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to make this happen. And I'm going to do it because I believe you. That's something about in HR as having the courage to stand up and fight. And that does mean as well we have to manage compliance. I do not believe that HR should be the police, but neither do I believe that we should design the best possible way of running a company and then just allow people to do what they want. We should at least monitor and keep track. We should go out and find out where it's working. And one of the most exciting advances in my mind in HR technology is not how do we help people to write appraisals. Yeah. I even saw one. I saw a piece of software in Chicago where it said to the manager, put in the name, put in the gender, put in the age, and put in how long they've worked for the company. And guess what? It wrote an appraisal. It said, Clinton, has been with the organization a long time, and his experience and performance are highly valued, and he has a long-term future career. And I thought, that's rinky-dink. So I answered the same questions. It wrote a completely different performance appraisal. I mean, is that scary? Yeah. That's where some technology is going. But other technology, we're working with one organization where it monitors what people are actually doing, how they're using the systems, the time in which they come in. And it's advising HR, this part of the business might need some help. That part of the business seems to be doing things well. We are moving into an age where technology will advise us how we can do the things that will get compliance, not through beating people up, but by telling us where the locus of excellence is, where the potential weaknesses are, so that we can go out and do something. Number 9, we have to therefore embrace technology. We are now in a position where the technology that our employees' children have exceeds the technology that you have on your desk. That is something we have to engage with. In HR, You know, it's no good saying I'm technophobic. We have to engage with it in some shape or form. Just be careful of the snake oil salesman. There is no perfect technology. It's what's appropriate. Technology is an enabler, but if you don't engage with it, you are likely to be disabled, to use a politically correct phrase. And lastly, therefore, we need to understand the impact of cultural differences to account for them and capitalize on them. We have to go out and we have to learn how we are going to use our newfound skills, how we're going to apply our courage, how we are going to get our organizations to face up to the challenges of the next decade, and how they're going to allow us to be part of the business, not just a supporter of it. So I leave you with my conclusion. I don't believe there's been a time when the opportunity for us to actually make a direct impact on the business has been greater. My fear is the cost of us failing to seize that opportunity could be immense for the organizations in which we work. I'm hoping that through the other speakers, you'll leave here today inspired, courageous, that you'll go out there and acquire new skills, and as often has been the case in Israel, you'll actually lead the way in some of the great global organizations for which you work. Thank you for your time and hospitality. I love being here, and I hope to see you again.